Welcome to the Kaisercraft blog. My name's Colette. Today I want to show you how I've made these two very simple, cute little cards using the wonderful Kaisercraft dies. With the Bigshot machine, you actually get a platform with your machine as well as two acrylic plates. First up, I'm going to cut, and in order to cut I need both of these little tabs that come with the platform down. So I'm going to be cutting on my number 2. One thing you'll notice that I've done with my tabs is I have actually removed my tab number 2, the top one, because I just find it a bit of a hassle moving these back and forward all the time. I'd much rather just put this on top. It's much quicker, I find. So for cutting I'm going to need that tab down, so I'm going to place that platform onto my machine. The next thing I want to do is I want to put down my metal shim. Now I use a metal shim which doesn't come as a standard with your Bigshot machine, but I use this for cutting with every single die that I have, and also for embossing, because I found it gives a much better cut and a much more pronounced embossing on my actual images. So that goes down. Then the next thing I need to pop down is my acrylic plate, and you can see my acrylic plate, this is really quite well used, and it's used all the way around. You want to get in the habit of putting your dies all over, not just in the middle, and you also want to get in the habit of rotating your plates as you use them. This will stop them ending up like a skateboard rack or rink. So that goes on next. I want to cut out one of the nesting ovals from Kaisercraft. I love the fact that these dies all come with this great magnetic sheet, which is really quite thick. It's the best that I've actually seen on the market, and it holds the dies really, really well. I hope Kaiser actually bring this out as a product in itself, because I certainly would be buying more of it. So I'm going to use the second largest of the nesting dies, and I'm going to pop my piece of card, which is one of the pink, I think it's Musk from Kaisercraft, and I'm going to take the die and I'm going to place it cut side down. You could do it the other way round, which is the cut side up and place the die on top, so I place the card on top. But what I like to do is to place the card down with the right side facing up, and then I can position this exactly in the middle, and then I can reuse the relief, or in other words what's left over, on other projects. So my card is down, my die is down, cut side down, and I'm going to take the second acrylic plate, I'm going to pop that over, and I'm going to run this through my machine. So that's my first cut done, and you can see how beautifully the Kaisercraft dies cut. So I'm going to pop this to one side, but I can use that as a frame or something else later. And I do have a box, which is my later box, and you can see in here all sorts of die cuts that I have cut out, reliefs, etc., that I use for later. So that's a good idea you might want to use. So I've now cut the oval out. I'm going to pop that to one side. The next thing I want to cut out is one of the label dies. These are 3 lovely label dies, and I'm going to take the center one and I'm going to cut that again in pink. So my card is facing texture side up, my die goes cut side down. My acrylic plate is on top as before, and I'm going to roll that through. Now the nice thing about these is that we get a little centerpiece that we can use for putting our journaling on, and we then have the relief, which you can keep for something else later. And Kaisercraft have also helped us out by bringing out this handy little tool, and it helps me just to pop out nice and easily my little images. So that's my frame that I need to use on my card later. So I'm going to pop that to one side as well. This little piece here is going to go into my later box. I've also gone ahead and pre-cut another one of those, because on my card I want to have my writing on a white piece, and I'm going to marry these up, so I've got a pink outline and a white center. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, actually before we do that, let's just recap on cutting. So for cutting with the Bigshot, what you need to have is both of your tabs down. I like to use the metal shim, that goes down next. I then like to have my cutting plate, that goes down next. Then I would have a piece of cardstock, texture side up, and then I'd have a die, cut side down, and then I'd have my final acrylic plate and I'd roll that through. So that's for cutting. Now what I want to show you is how I use the wonderful cut and emboss dies, and I'm using the mannequin die from Kaisercraft. This is one of my favorites, really like this little die. Now this die is what we call a cut and emboss, because if you look at it closely you can see round the outside you've got that ridge which is the cutting line, and then in the center you've got this kind of hollowed out flourish design. That little piece there is going to be embossed, and the way we do that is a two-step process. The first step, we're going to go ahead and cut again, so we all know how to do this. Metal shim, acrylic plate, card, texture side up, die, and I'm going to place this in the center because I'm sure I'm going to want to reuse this relief, and my second acrylic plate, and I'm going to roll that through. Okay, now what I really encourage you guys to do is once you've cut with your dies, flip them over and just do a check. Can you see that that's now cut beautifully with that one pass? Now if there's an area that you think, oh, that's not quite cut there, what you would do is you'd put it back onto your acrylic plate, you would rotate it, and then you'd put it in a different position on your plate. In most instances it's not the die that's giving you the problem, it's the fact that your plate in that specific area has been really well used and is not giving you a good cut. So therefore rotating it and putting it in a different position, you'll get a good cut next time. I do have some very intricate dies that I do need to rotate 4 times before I get a really good cut, and that's some of the really intricate lacy kind of dies. Okay, so that's now cut. The next thing I need to do is I need to remove, carefully keeping this card in the die, I need to remove my plates and I need to remove my tab number 2. So for the second stage, which is the embossing stage, I need to have tab number 1 down. I am still going to use my metal shim because I like the embossing to be nice and raised. Now the other thing that I like to have is I like to have a clean acrylic plate for my embossing, because with these other ones, if I was to emboss with those, the marks on those plates will come through on my cardstock, and I sometimes don't like that kind of look. So by using a clean acrylic plate, you're not going to have that problem. So the acrylic plate goes down next. The next thing that's going to go down is my die with the card still in place, but this time I have got the cut side up. So the cut ridges are on upwards, in other words I flipped the die over. The next thing I've got here is a silicone mat that's going to sit over that die, and then the last thing I've got is the Sizzix impressions pad that's going to go on top, and then I'm going to roll that through. Okay. So now what we can see is, I'm just going to pop that out, and you'll notice that on your dies there's usually a circle which is your center popper outer. So if I'm putting that little needle through there, this die is going to pop out really easily for me. Now when you look at this, can you actually see? Can you see how it's embossed? Hopefully you can see that on the video. It's a beautiful flourish. going through my mannequin. Absolutely love that. Okay, now with this mannequin, sometimes it's a bit too long, and on some of my cards I have actually cut it and just made it a bit shorter by just popping this behind. But on the card I'm doing today, this is a perfect size. So the mannequin now goes away. So just to recap on your cutting and embossing, so the first stage we go ahead and cut as per normal. The second stage we take away our tab number 2, so we're now working on tab number 1. That goes down. My metal shim goes down. My clear unmarked acrylic plate goes down. My die goes down cut side up with the card still intact. I'm going to put the silicone mat on top, and I'm going to put the actual impressions plate on the top of that and roll that through.